All right, excellent. Good morning, everybody. Welcome, and thank you for joining us. Today, we are going to be discussing the hot topic of EBEWE Phase 2, Audit and Retro-Commissioning, better known as ARCX, requirements. Ever since the city sent out a notification regarding this requirement in June, our phone has literally been ringing off the hook. There's a lot of questions, quite a bit of confusion, so we thought that hosting a Q&A would be a good forum to address all these questions and hopefully clear up some of the confusion. This morning, we've organized the Q&A session by topics. So Marika's going to kick us off with a bit of just a program overview, so we can all start at the base level understanding, and then we'll get into the Phase 2 just general compliance requirement, as well as the specific technical requirements. And then we'll end up with how green economy is approaching this and what our services are. So to ask a question, use your chat button. Make sure that you are, I believe you have just host options. So go ahead and just lodge your question through the chat button. We will review them and try to answer them while we're talking about that topic, or we should have time at the end to answer any additional questions that come in. Okay, so I just wanted to introduce our team. We have three of our amazing team members on the call today. Marika Erdely, who is our CEO and founder. She started Green Economy about 12 years ago. And it was the coming of age of AB 1103, which was the first state energy benchmarking disclosure requirement. Out of that, the company is blossomed really. She's got a wonderful team of benchmarking and compliance experts, as well as a growing and impressive portfolio of energy efficiency consulting and retrofitting projects. We also have Savannah Schneider on the line, who is Principal and Director of Energy Projects. She has been with Green Economy since pretty much the inception. She has over 7 years of energy benchmarking and auditing and analysis experience. Among many critical roles she has here, Savannah knows the EBEWE compliance like the back of her hand. She has asked many a question to DBS, so her expertise is undeniable. She's deeply involved as well in all aspects of Phase 2 compliance, so from providing proposals to your clients or potential clients, to being out on site for the audit. We also have on the line Mandy Reinhardt. She has been with the company for about 3 years, and she has also started in benchmarking and has now moved on to energy project manager. She is responsible for a lot of different aspects of Phase 2. However, her specialty is in evaluating your path to compliance, as well as submitting all of the Energy Star certifications. So she's our go-to for any question Energy Star related. So with that, I'm going to pass the mic over to Marika, and thank you all for joining.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for being here. We decided to do this webinar today because we keep getting the same questions. So we thought, well, why don't we just put it out there and explain what's actually happening with EBEWE Phase 2, so everyone's more knowledgeable, and hopefully we are able to save everybody some money, because there's a lot of people that think they have to do an audit because there's a couple other people, service providers out there just drawing them towards audits, when really that's not necessary. There are other ways to comply with the Phase 2. So let's talk first about EBEWE. What is it? It's the existing building energy and water efficiency ordinance, right? So we're looking at energy and water. There are 2 phases to the ordinance. One is the annual benchmarking, which is run through the EPA software. Energy Star Portfolio Manager tells you how efficient your building is operating on an energy and water basis, compares your building against other buildings in the software, against a national median, and against itself. It's got great information. I equate it to having a financial statement about your building. an actual financial statement, but in numbers, but still it can be easily deciphered. So that's what phase 1 is. It's an annual benchmarking report. Is due June 1 of each year. Yes, it's been told for the city, but it's still due. Phase 2 is a little bit more complicated, and that's what our focus is going to be about today. And it's due every 5 years. So it's not every year, it's every 5 years. And you have basically 2 options. Again, we're looking at energy and water, but the options are you have to either have a building that's not performing, isn't high performing, hasn't saved energy during that energy or water during that 5-year period, and then has to have an audit path, goes through this audit retro commissioning report, or it can qualify for one of the exemptions. That's what we're going to talk about.
Okay, we have our first awesome question, which is a fantastic reminder. So the question is, what does EBEWE stand for? I apologize for not laying that out. EBEWE stands for the Existing Buildings, Energy and Water Efficiency. This is the LA City program. It was initiated with the Climate Action Plan, LA's Climate Action Plan. I don't know if we know the date.
Right. It's the plan. Well, the reason, let's just talk about why even do it, right? So why is the city even focused on it? Why are there even benchmarking laws? Let's just even back up a little bit more. We're getting into these questions is because we have a, whether you believe in climate change or not, whatever, right? Let's not get political. The point is inefficient buildings create a lot of carbon emissions, and those go out into the atmosphere. Inefficient buildings cost more money to operate. Inefficient buildings cost more to maintain because you've got old equipment. And also you're not taking advantage of tax benefits and or incentives that are out there. So the whole point of all these cities, and there are many, many cities across the country and states that have benchmarking disclosure laws, is because they want building owners to understand how their buildings are performing so they can reduce the emissions going out into the atmosphere, but also so the ownership or the tenant can go, oh, wow, I thought my bills were bad, but I didn't realize that my building is performing subpar, really badly, not a great score. It's telling us that you can actually save energy and money and carbon emissions if you make your building more energy efficient. Okay, let's keep going. So now we've got some questions. So we're going to just kind of answer the question, read the question, and then, if you have more questions on top of it, please let us know. Okay, what is the phase 2? So it's a performance reporting to the city of LA every 5 years. How is it determined? Well, every single building that got identified that needs to comply with the city's law, with this ordinance, EBEWE, was given a number. Initially, this number, the phase 2 was tied to the parcel number, the APN, but because there's some buildings that are on multiple parcels, it got all confusing. So every building that's part of this ordinance was given a number. It's called a building ID, LADBS building ID number. The last digit of that building ID is the driver for when you have to comply with phase 2. All right. So we are currently in the 2s and 3s, which are the reports are due December 1, 2022. Last year we were 0s and 1s. That has been told, but those reports still need to be due. They haven't been told that you don't have to comply. You still do need to comply, but the deadline of December 1, 2021 has been basically extended for certain exemptions. Certain exemptions, you've already lost the window, but with other exemptions, you can still meet phase 2. Do I need to comply? Yes, if your building is required to comply with phase 1, annual benchmarking, then yes, you need to comply with phase 2. And it's just based on that table. There are time extensions and there are exceptions that you may meet. And if you're interested or you think your building can meet one of those, let us know and we can work together on that. What if I didn't comply with EBEWE phase 1 benchmarking? We get this a lot. There are a lot of people that have basically ignored this ordinance from the beginning. If you look at the LADBS website, there's a lot of people that just haven't spent the time and didn't want to do it, but now they got a letter. It says you need to comply. So all of a sudden they're focused on phase 2. In order to actually comply with phase 2, you have to do phase 1. And you have to do phase 1 for that whole 5-year period of time, because those years, anything that happened during those 5 years can help you meet one of the energy or water exemptions. Plus, one other thing on that, if the city didn't comply, if you didn't comply with the city and your building's over 50,000, you would have to comply with the state law anyway, which is AB 802. Isn't the requirement waived due to code? Yeah, the 2021 deadline was, quote, told, but the requirements remain. You still have to do it. It doesn't matter if it was told, and there was a notice that came out for that period, but the phase 2 that's due this coming year in 12/22, that has not been told. What about the delayed requirement for those initial properties with a 0 or 1? You still have to comply. You're still going to have to do it in 5 years from that date anyway. So they will still accept audit reports, right? And some exemptions. What happens if you don't comply? Yeah, well, one, you have no idea how your building is performing, so you could be wasting energy and money. Most likely you are. The fee right now is a ridiculous, I'm gonna say ridiculous, non-compliance fee of $202, because that's not a real big stick to get anyone to comply. But there are late fees, collection fees, and interest. And if you don't pay, you have to pay. There's late fees, but payment does not result in compliance. You still have to submit the report. And if you think about it, if you're trying to sell your property, or some lenders also require this. So by not being in compliance, you're kind of putting yourself at a bit of a risk for any type of further legal action or possible, violation on the building. My compliance due date is a year or 2 from now. Is that enough time to become compliant? Yeah, it's actually a perfect time to look at it. We really like to look ahead and see how the building is performing and see if you can meet one of the exemptions. And if you wait till the last year, if you were, let's say, needed a lighting retrofit, or you needed to change out your gas boiler and you delayed until like 3 months before the end of that 5-year cycle, you're not going to have the energy savings that you require. So you're kind of out of luck, and you're going to have to do an audit. So the whole point here is, if you plan ahead and know where your building stands, then you can avoid the audit because you can meet one of the exemptions.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much. I don't see any new questions at the moment. I think we can move on unless anybody has any further questions. You can submit it either in the chat or in your Q&A button on your menu. I think we're good to move on.
Okay. So what are those requirements? Do I need an audit? This is the question that people keep calling about. Do I need an audit? Not necessarily. You may actually meet one of these, one of the exemptions. And I don't know, Savannah, you want to talk a little bit about what an audit entails?
Sure. So the city is requiring an ASHRAE level 2 audit. It's just that ASHRAE is just a certain standard that is being met when conducting these audits. So basically what happens is someone goes out to the building and does a sample. Like if it's a multifamily building, we'll go into a certain number of units to look at the equipment in the units and at the building level, looking at everything from lighting, HVAC, domestic hot water, water fixtures, all types of mechanical equipment, if they're solar, you know, the envelope, so like looking at the building windows and insulation, things like that. So looking at all of the equipment in the building and how the building was built and analyzing how it's performing, and then taking all that information, putting it into a report, as well as analyzing the benchmarking and looking at the historical utility bills. And then from that, the report also gives recommendations on improvements that could be made and the estimated costs associated with those measures.
So it's a super valuable report, right? I mean, it's got great information in it. The problem is it costs money. I mean, it's expensive. It's more expensive than any of the meeting any of the exemptions. And we're firm believers in investing in your real estate, doing a lighting retrofit, whatever it is that you need, better thermostats, than investing in an audit report. So, you know, we have a competitor out there that's focused on the audit reports. We're not. We really feel it's important to invest more wisely and meet one of these energy or water exemptions. So what are these energy exemptions? This is a good question. So there's basically 5 of them. 1 and 2 are basically the same. It's the Energy Star certification of the building, which means the building has an Energy Star score over 75. The Energy Star score is a 1 to 100 rating system, 75 and above. You are eligible to be Energy Star certified. So 1 is getting Energy Star certification the year of compliance. So if you need to comply this year for 2022, you need to have the Energy Star certification done this year. Number 2 is looking at 2 or 3 years. Some people want to have their building Energy Star certified every year. It's not necessary for the ordinance. Really, the year that you need to comply is adequate. Number 3 is if your building doesn't have an Energy Star score, then you have to perform better than the national median of buildings of your similar use. Like, what buildings don't have Energy Star scores? Manufacturing buildings don't have them. A lot of retail properties don't have them. So there's some buildings that just don't have scores, mainly because the software doesn't have enough to compare against, or it's complicated to, the use types are so different that it's hard to compare against any similar building in the software, so there's no score. But number 4 is the one that's key here, and that's the one that a lot of buildings can meet, and that's if your building has reduced its source energy use intensity, which is the EUI, by 15% during that 5-year period. What does that actually mean? Source energy use is looking at how the energy as it comes from the grid to the building and then being used on a square foot basis, so that gas and the electricity are both converted to a kBTU number, which is a UK number, UK measure of energy, and then it's added together and divided by the square footage of the property. So it's actually looking at the energy on a square foot basis. Now, if you did any kind of work in the property, either electrical or gas related, that energy use intensity would go down. And so the city's looking for a 15% reduction in that period. Number 5, if your building doesn't have a central cooling system and has done 4 of 6 different measures, cool roofs, different things, then you might meet that energy exemption. If you are not able to meet one of these, then you're going to have to head down that path of an energy audit. So what are the water exemptions? These are pretty easy, and it's hard, I know, in multifamily for this to occur. Number 1 is that your water use intensity, which is basically your water use, has to drop by 20% during that 5-year period. Really hard to do in certain types of buildings, but there are all kinds of water saving methods, obviously for bathrooms and in kitchens and things like that, with toilets. Now there's all kinds of great programs. We have a partner that works in that area. So there are things that you can do to save energy, also in your irrigation or water, also in your irrigated water. So that's really the number 1 we look at. Number 2, again, if you have no central cooling system, there are some exemptions. if you do certain measures, 2 or 3 of the measures, if you're interested in that, let us know. And then the building's use kind of 3 is like it's meeting all of the current code. You have to have things permitted in order to make these number 2 and 3. So they're a little bit trickier. A lot of people put in toilets and don't permit them. Doesn't work. LADBS wants to see those permits. And then if it's a new building and it's less than 5 years old, it doesn't need to comply with the water exemptions. Otherwise, then you got to do a water audit.
Hey, Marika, I wanted to throw something in that I had read. So if by chance you go for the prescriptive measures and you didn't permit those projects, there is a mechanism to go back to LADBS and obtain those and have them counted towards that exemption.
Oh, you do? Okay. Well, it takes a little bit more work, and we have to remember
And
all of
time.
these exemptions have to be stamped by a professional engineer. It's unfortunate because we thought that they weren't going to require that, but they do. So anything here, it's got to be accurate because it's somebody's license on the line for, you know, signing off on these exemptions, both energy and water. So we have to follow the book here as to what's required. Okay, can my building be Energy Star certified? That's a good question. Good question. I think one of the things is that there's building types that fail. We had several last year that failed. I'm going to swing this one over to Mandy, and she can answer this one since she's our Energy Star certification expert. Mandy.
Hi. So going back on what Marika said, we did have a lot of mainly multifamily buildings failing last year because they didn't have the appropriate bathroom or kitchen exhaust. But just going back on this, indoor environmental quality meets industry standards for air quality, thermal comfort, and illumination. And then for the bathroom, it either has to have a window or an exhaust fan that is 50 CFM. And then for the kitchen, any type of exhaust to the exterior. That's a really important part, is that a lot of kitchens and multifamilies just have recirculating fans, but it's not exhausting out to the exterior. And the fan also has to have a minimum of 100 CFM. So we have someone go out and do the site visit, and then we do the application, turn it in, and we work with ESPM to get that certified.
Yeah, so it does take a couple days or a couple months to get this done because we have to do the testing, we complete the application, send it to the EPA. They look at it, they might come back with questions, and then they'll approve it. And one of the things, because some of these bathrooms failed last year, what people did is they actually went back out and changed the exhaust fan, and then we went back and tested again, and then they passed. So if you have the original bathroom fans, it's probably going to be a problem passing them.
And yeah, like Marika said, this does take a few months. So it's important to start now because we need to have those applications in as soon as possible.
Yeah. And there's no leeway. So the city was very tight with the deadline last year, and I was able to talk them out of, you know, extending it, but this year they've not told it. And so if we don't get these done on time, then you only have an option of either meeting one of the other exemptions, which you may or may not meet. So what happens when there's no Energy Star score for the building? Then you can't get an Energy Star certified, which means you can't meet 3, which is exemption, which could still meet, you could still meet 3, 4, or 5, which 3 is that your building is performing 25% better than the national median. 4 is that, again, that 15% source EUI reduction. And then number 5 is that you did those things in your building, various things in your building. So you could still maybe get an exemption without having to do an audit, even if you don't have a Energy Star score for your property. This is a good one. How do you get non-tenant data, security guards, hotel guests, and how does this use affect our score? Mandy.
Okay, so the first part of this is that the occupancy percentage does not actually affect your Energy Star score. However, it does affect if your score can get Energy Star certified. And so the minimum occupancy percentages are for specific building types are for offices at least 55%, for hotels at least 60%, and then multifamily at least 80%. And then as far as like security guards and hotel guests, I have actually asked this specific question to ESPM before because we had someone say, you know, our main business hours are from 8 to 5. However, we have security guard team on site 24/7. And they did say that security guard staff does not count towards the number of employees in the ESPM details. So really, they're just looking at the main employees on the main shifts and then the main operation hours. So even if you have just a small team of security guards, it does not count. That does not go into the building details.
And the hotel guest, that's tied to the number of beds in the hotel, right? That's, yeah. So there is part of what's super important is when you're accurately benchmarking a property, there's certain building details that are super important, but then the other part of it is the operational use, which is the thing. What we're talking about here is the operation, and that's number of beds or number of people working, you know, whether there's a restaurant on site or things like that make a big difference in the score. And yes, you can default it, but that really means nothing because it's not consistent with what's going on in your property. So that those building details are super important.
I also wanted to step in for a second. We have another acronym, which is ESPM, or Energy Star Portfolio Manager, which is the platform that we use to Energy Star benchmark and then submit and certify for Energy Star.
Great. Yeah.
Cool. Okay.
When seeking an Energy Star certification exemption, can we apply for previous years? Mandy, you want to hit that one again?
No, you cannot.
No.
Because this goes through the EPA, they actually have a specific deadline that is not related to LADBS. Deadline is December 9th to submit all the applications. So you can't retroactively get Energy Star certified. So if you are wanting to Energy Star certify, do it immediate for this year, do it immediately. If you're trying to do it for another year, unfortunately you can't, but you can try to meet other exemptions.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to address two questions that came in. Okay, so this kind of goes back a little bit, but how long approximately does it take to complete the phase 1 benchmarking and phase 2?
That's a good question. So phase 1, it relies on getting the information from the client, the building details and the use details, like what we're talking about, the operational details. But really the hardest part of this is getting the utility data from utility. So we have to put in certain information and request it from the utility portal. And that right now can take, it's supposed to be 30 days by law. The utilities are supposed to have this done in 30 days, but we're seeing some of them take, 60 to 90 days to get the utility data. And then because we need historical data, because we're looking at a 5-year period, and the gas company only gives 2 years, we actually have to request that additional 3 years from the gas company, which then takes additional time. So it could take 30 days at best, 60 to 90 days at worst, to get all of 5 years of utility data information. And phase 2, we can usually get that done probably in 60 to 90 days because we have to schedule the audit or go out and do an audit, do the report, submit it. The exemptions, if you have an exemption, that can be done in probably a week and a half. We can look at it and get that done. That's easy. It's when it takes more work.
And by those exemptions that can be weeks, those are like the ones that don't require on-site visits. So
Yes.
if we can just tell from Energy Star that you've reduced, you know, the energy reduction or that 25% or higher, those
Right.
could go a little faster. But when we're dependent on auditing and Energy Star to respond, then it's 2 to 3 months.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, thank you. And then the next question is the county requiring these reports? And I assume that's meaning all the phase 2 audit and retro commissioning.
It's a city law. So it's the city of LA. The city of LA, we can just back up one step. The city of LA requires all buildings over 20,000 square feet to comply with the city of LA's ordinance, which is the EBEWE, right? Existing buildings, energy and water efficiency. So that's 20,000. The state of California, which we're not really talking about, but just so everyone knows, is that it's buildings over 50,000 square feet in the state of California need to comply. So there's nothing really in the county. It's just if you're in the city, it's 20,000. The state, it's 50,000. The state does not have a phase 2 yet, but I will tell you the state law has some very big enforcement mechanism if they decide to actually pull it, not like the $202 from the city. It's very expensive, but they just haven't done it yet. They were going to pull on their enforcement once, but then COVID happened, so they didn't do it. But the city, it's just a city law, all buildings over 20,000.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, one more. Okay, so for phase 2, if you need retrofits, can you give ballpark timeline on completing those retrofits, I guess? And can you also mention just the rule of thumb for how long ahead of the deadline people should start the process to be safe?
So retrofits, I mean, the minute you do the retrofit, you're going to see the savings, right? Lighting, LED lighting, you're going to see it. Yes, there's a payback period, but you'll see the savings immediately in your KWH savings right away. So, with a retrofit, we have to audit, we have to design, we have to see if there's any incentives out there. We're all about incentives. And then we propose to the client, and then we have to get the signature, signing the contract, and then it's technically, we're waiting on material. So it could be 30 to 60 days, I guess it's taken about to get materials, or 90, Savannah. It's taken a while, right? To get.
Yeah, a lot of equipment right now is back ordered. So we're seeing at least like 60 to 90 days on a lot of equipment.
Yeah, so you need to add that in if you want to save energy for 2022. Kind of hard to get that in, but 2023 energy, we're all about it. You can get going on it, and then you have a full year of energy savings.
Sorry, so just to be clear, so if we were to start on the retrofits ahead of the deadline, you're saying about a year or so?
Yeah,
In order to have them, okay.
I would, if you want to actually have a year of savings and meet that energy exemption 4, which is the least expensive, and also you're going to save money. You just need to start right away. Plus you're wasting money, you're wasting energy.
Yeah, and that's a year before the deadline is due of actually starting the implementation, because in order to acquire enough savings to meet one of those exemptions, you have to have enough time to actually get the KWH or KBTU savings that you need. So really starting even more than a year in advance is ideal, because you need time to plan and apply for incentives or the like. So it's a year before of actually starting the install, but planning probably another year in advance.
Yeah.
Perfect. All right. Excellent. Thank you. Okay. I don't see any other questions specifically to the requirement. Move on to the green economy approach. Okay.
So we are big believers in actually doing it accurately. My background, I was an accountant for 30 something years, and it's all about things ticking and tying and debits and credits. And so we kind of run everything that way here too, is that we do it right. So you can actually, we like to evaluate the building. If we haven't benchmarked it, then we'll do a free evaluation right now. Look at your building, see how, if you did it or someone else, service provider, prepared the benchmarking, we can tell you right off, probably within a couple seconds, if it's done right or not. And we do all the other work, right? We do the Energy Star certification applications, we get all the exemptions filed, we'll do the audits, and we have a couple engineers that help us with the audit reports and submit the proof of compliance. And then we construct and manage energy and water retrofit projects. So we're kind of in from the very beginning to the end. And we do like to go back to the benchmarking if we do a retrofit project, because then we're seeing that the savings are actually happening, which is what we're all excited about. But I think, Mandy, I don't know if you can talk a little bit about what are some of the things you're seeing when you're evaluating these other people's benchmarking.
Yeah, so with benchmarking, there is just a lot going on with it, a lot of details. And so, you know, a lot of people are coming to us saying that they have done the benchmarking before, but then you look at it and you can see that all of the building details are defaulted, or it's missing data for a few months throughout the year. And a big one is that the data isn't going back 5 years for both electric and gas. And that can be an issue if you're trying to get a % reduction exemption and you only have maybe the first 2 years and you didn't meet it. You're missing the other years that we would also be able to evaluate. So you're possibly missing out on an exemption with that. And then when I'm doing the evaluations, I'm also requesting meter lists for LEDWP and SCG if you went through the utilities in order to receive the data. If you're manually entering bills, I'm making sure that you're entering for all the tenants and that you're capturing everything. So there is a lot of little details in there that I'm looking for.
Yeah, you wouldn't think that benchmarking would be so detailed, but it actually is. And if you want to do it right and really understand it and use it, to me, it's like, why not use it to help drive investments and decisions, right? And if it's done poorly, you know, it doesn't help anyone. It doesn't really mean anything to anyone then. So it's basically garbage. So why, you know, so you're complying, but it doesn't mean it's not accurate. So why not do it accurately so you can use it to make decisions?
I actually feel like we kind of addressed the second question on that slide. So do you want to just speak to what our scope is and what we can actually accomplish for compliance?
I think I did, didn't I? Anyone else want to add anything onto that? I mean, we just make sure it's right. I think I would say high integrity here, and we're just trying to make sure we do it accurately. We don't believe in pushing people to audits that don't need them. That's not our view. We really actually think it makes more sense to find an exemption. And yeah, maybe we don't make as much money, but it's being honest.
Absolutely. And so for all of the phase 2, we can fulfill all exemptions or even submitting requests for exceptions or time extensions. We complete the audit. We have the licensed professional to verify, sign off, and we submit the compliance to the city on your behalf.
Yeah, we do it all.
Mandy, I don't know if there's any more detail on this that you want to.
Yeah, I was just going to add to that I mean, I want to give everyone a benefit of the doubt and that they've done it correctly, but it is just good to look over, because also our engineer is not going to sign off on anything that is incorrect. And like Marika had mentioned, this is their license on the line. So it is just really good for us to check all the last details just to make sure that, you know, we're being honest and saying you do meet an exemption, but then our engineer says that you don't. So that's why, yeah, just check. Even if it is correct, it's good for us to just give another glance.
Okay, why is the cost of an audit so high? Why does pricing vary so much between exemptions and audits? I'm going to throw this one to Savannah, who's our audit expert.
So as I mentioned earlier, an ASHRAE level 2 audit requires us to go out to the building and collect a bunch of existing conditions on the building. So basically the short answer is it's very time consuming. We are looking at every single system in the building and gathering all the data and then having to analyze it and put it into a report. And all of that is extremely time consuming. And it's also paying for a licensed engineer. So they come at a price, and the city is requiring it to be signed off by a licensed professional. So that does factor into the cost of it. Additionally, ASHRAE level 2 audits are generally around 15 cents per square foot, but that's a very estimated average number. It really does vary significantly based on the size of the building, because whether you have a 20,000 square foot building or 100,000 square foot building, there's still a lot of work that goes into conducting the site visit and collecting the information and actually writing the report. So unfortunately, when you get into the smaller square feet buildings, you tend to be on the higher end of cost per square foot, because there's just still a minimum amount of work that goes into completing those reports. So that's essentially why the cost is so high on those. And then the pricing difference between exemptions and audits, there's a lot more that obviously goes into doing the audit and the report, whereas the exemption, if it's just, the engineer reviewing and making sure that the building meets that % reduction, it's a lot less time that they have to spend in reviewing it, and they can just sign off and we submit all the documents to the city. Even Energy Star certification is more cost effective than doing an audit, but even though it still requires us to go out to the building and collect information, it's just less time consuming.
You say smaller buildings, about what square foot?
Oh, which square foot, like when it starts to the cost?
When you were saying that the cost can be, it could be, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, anything that's under 50,000 square feet, you tend to see a higher cost per square foot, because again, it's just when you're doing that calculation, there's a minimum amount of time that goes into conducting the audits and the reports. So it just naturally becomes more expensive when you have a smaller building on a cost per square foot basis, because there's that minimum amount of effort that goes into the audits and reports.
Got it.
Yeah, and the report is great. I mean, it does give you incredible information. There's no doubt about it. And we even review it with you. So it's not like we just send you a report and you're like, oh, I don't know what this is. What does this all mean? No, we review it with the client and we go through it, and it does help you understand what's happening in your building. But if you already know, or we can help you identify that your building, you don't have LEDs yet, well, that's a no-brainer. Like, contact us, we can get an audit done for just lighting and get the lighting retrofit done, and that can help you save energy. You don't have to do a full-on ASHRAE level 2 audit to have energy savings in a building.
And another thing to consider as well is, even though the cost of the audit might be high in your first year of compliance, the goal of doing that report is to help you meet your in 5 years, that next compliance cycle. So the information that's provided in that report is really valuable to you in letting you know that, hey, you can do a lighting retrofit, a boiler replacement, replace your water fixtures and meet the savings reduction that you need, or get to a score of 75 or above, so that in the next compliance cycle, you can actually need an exemption. So if you have to do an audit and there are measures in there that can help you save energy or increase your Energy Star score, you should definitely take advantage of that before the next compliance cycle. So there is value in it.
Yeah, exactly. And the incentives are available right now. I mean, there are utility incentives right now to help you pay for it. Yeah, so here are all the incentives. So just, LADWP has a CLIP incentive. That's for larger buildings with 200 kW, demand average annual LADWP CPP for all types of retrofits, including lighting. There's a GAP program right now for electrification, which is removing gas from buildings in the eastern San Fernando Valley. If you have a property out there, let us know. SoCal Gas rebates for gas consuming equipment. This is like 50% of your new boiler can be covered with a rebate. We're just doing a project in Santa Clarita with that incentive. Water saving, various incentives, as I said, there's lots of great incentives out there, toilets and aerators and things like that. And then outside of LADWP, for those people with properties in Edison territory, SoCal Rent, an amazing multifamily incentive program, can pay up to 50–60% of your retrofit. And then SCE, Wilden, all kinds of buildings and retrofit incentives available. So there's a lot of free money, and QUIP is the new part of the CARES Act from the federal government. So any of these retrofits that you're talking about can come off your taxable income. So there's money, there's actually a tax deduction side or tax credit if you're doing solar. That's another thing. Solar is key, solar PV. There's federal tax credits and state tax accelerated depreciation. So there's a lot of things, a lot of free money or ways to maneuver, making your building more energy efficient by taking advantage of these incentives and or tax benefits. So what's our approach? So we really evaluate the phase 1 benchmarking report for the building's best path to phase 2 compliance, or we'll complete the benchmarking if it hasn't been done. We provide phase 2 proposals for those exemptions, and our audit services we have a form that actually shows you year to year what your scores are and whether you meet any of the exemptions. And then upon a signed agreement, we fulfill all the services, submit proof to LADBS, and then provide the reports to the building or owner representative and meet with you so you can understand what's going on.
Awesome. Okay, well, that was a lot of questions. Very dense. Like we said, there's definitely been a lot out there. So thank you guys. I'm going to open the lines up now for anybody, for any other questions that anyone has. We can go back. It could be related to any part of this EBEWE ordinance or any of our services, what Green Economy provides, solutions, services. Don't be shy.
Yeah, anyone have any questions? We're happy to answer them. Or you can reach out to one of us and ask as well. We take pride in what we do. I think you can probably see that. So we'd love to help you.
Absolutely. We'll also be making this presentation, the slide deck and the recording available in the coming days. So you'll have that to refer to and pass on if you'd like. I don't know. I don't see any more questions, you guys. I think we could be done.
I think we might be done.
Yeah, well, thank you all so much for sticking around with us through this. I hope it was informative. I hope your answers, you got the answers to your questions that you were looking for. Of course, like Marika said, if anything else comes up or you need specific clarification for properties that you manage or own, you know, just reach out, let us know, and we can work through that with you.
Yep, I'm happy to answer them. Thanks for being on this with us. Thanks, everyone.
Yep, thank you. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, bye.